going to get started with the committee of the whole meeting. Okay, good evening. It's 6:57 PM on Monday, August 10th, 2026. I'd like to call to order the Village of Brookfield Committee of the Whole meeting. Mike, can we have a roll call for the committee, please?
Trustee Ketchmark.
Here.
Trustee Whitehead.
Here.
Trustee Hendricks.
Here.
Trustee Naramatsu. Trustee Gilhooly.
Here.
Trustee Kaluzny.
Here.
President Garvey.
Here. Thank you, Mike. Okay, well, we have one item up to discuss under regular business, a discussion concerning the November referendum to finance a 25-year bond improvement program. This has been an obviously ongoing discussion. The board previously approved the language for the ballot question. Had a very, very good conversation at the previous committee of the whole meeting about what steps can be taken going forward if the referendum passes, and there's some talk about the education campaign. We have a very detailed memo, and I'm going to, Tim, you want to take the lead? I'm going to turn it over to Tim to kind of let us know what's happened, the information since the last board meeting, what the next steps recommended for the board are.
Thank you, President Garvey. As you've said, we've had a lot of discussion about the referendum program, made a lot of progress. We have a question, it's been filed, to be put on the ballot for the referendum, it's been filed with the county. So we're all set in that regard. We are ready to work with Metro Strategies to start. We've already started a little bit of the public education campaign, but I would like to finish that and then obviously continue with it as we lead up to November. It really, the lion's share of the money for this referendum is going to be for roads. We all know that, and that's, I think, clearly understood. Where we've had a lot of discussion and a lot of good, lively debate is, should we include an alley program with that? The challenge is, we don't know what that alley program is going to consist of yet, and clearly, staff, we don't know yet. We don't know what it should or would consist of. The board is, I think, grappling with that. And so, I understand that, and it's logical that at this point in time, that's the reality of where we are. So we've met, staff has met since the last board meeting with our consultants, and it is our collective recommendation to, at this point, start the public education campaign, focus on where the lion's share of the money is going, and that is the roadway, and talk about how we're going to maintain the roads in a 25-year road program, how that is going to be funded consistently through this funding source without raising property taxes on our residents. And then in the public education campaign say that if the referendum passes, we commit, and the village board commits, to holding public workshops, public meetings, and having more discussion about what and how should our alley program consist of as we move forward. And we could lay out all the options there. We could have more comments, more analysis, as much as we'd like. At least we'll know then if we have this money available, it won't be all the could-haves and would-haves and should-haves. It'll be, this is the money we have, this is the best way to spend it, and then we'll come back after these workshops, come back to the village board, we'll have further discussions about that. So campaign, focus on the road program, alley program, we commit to having more public discussion about it and public input, coming back to the board for a final call on that.
Okay, questions or comments from the board? I know I know this has been in the works for quite a while, and I know there's a kind of an education campaign and strategy, which I think was already started with the basic first post and email. I assume there's like a regular schedule or information we're gonna get out that include, and I know staff does a good job of, as the board has, anticipating frequently asked questions, and those are things that you'll be able to address in the materials.
Now, this is the same slide we showed a couple meetings ago, our intended public outreach schedule. We were going to focus the rest of the summer and into September on additional website updates, social media posts. We were going to host pop-up events at probably the farmers market and identify other suitable events as well, but farmers market seems to be the most logical place to do this. A big push and a big obvious or one piece of written information that gets mailed out. The only piece that gets mailed out to every home and every property owner in Brookfield is the Brookfielder. That's coming out in the fall. We would have an article in the next edition of that. And then in October, our idea is to host an open house here in this room, be available, have the key individuals available for questions and answers. Again, another website update in October. And then in middle to late October, we're gonna be sending out an information pamphlet to every home in, every property owner in Brookfield. And then obviously the referendum then is November 2nd. The referendum is November 3rd, Tuesday. That's the schedule that we talked about in the past.
Okay. All right, I mean, so staff's recommendation, the last meeting, there was a lot of conversation about this, and I think it was clear from the board, there wasn't a clear-cut decision made, but I also thought there was a clear direction from the board that we would need more public input on any decision on what an alley paving program would look like in terms of funding and cost match or anything like that, and I thought there was a kind of consensus that really couldn't be worked out or agreed in this period of time and couldn't be done without, I envision that being a pretty large public input, maybe a special meeting or a special committee of the whole item where it's advertised that we're talking about that and dedicate a lot of time to taking public input on any program going forward, so.
Yeah, I agree. I know we've heard consistently from staff that it's the number one issue that they hear about from residents. And I know we've gotten a few public comments at our board meeting discussions, but certainly not, the level of comment that I think is representative of the community as a whole. So I feel like if we're before we can make decisions about the specific structure of the program and the cost share, I feel like we need to hear more from residents, particularly if our goal is to ultimately get more alleys paved. We want to know how they feel about, residents taking on portion of the cost and the associated timeline or the village's role. So I think this is the right approach in terms of the high-level messaging on the alleys, and if the referendum were to pass, to work out the details collaboratively with residents.
I agree. I like the approach of taking more time and getting more village property owner input. We have seen only 2 submissions to the current program in quite a while, so that either people don't want their alleys paved or that program isn't working for them. So clearly we need some other options, and it would be great to hear from people and see which way they're leaning, and any other ideas. I know we have also a lot of creative people and talented professionals in the community that I'm sure have some ideas to share, or maybe they've lived in other communities that have had other solutions. So I'd love to hear more from the people.
I would agree with all that's been said, but adding on to that, I think we have to put our focus on the referendum passing and what that's about, because that's about the streets. When in 2016, we went to referendum for the series of bonds that were issued. Those bonds are expiring now. There is no continuing source of revenue for streets after these bonds. The bonds, I think it was over 6 years that we issued them, 2 years apart, 3 issues, so that, the payments gradually went up and the payments are gradually coming down. This would take the place of that. If we do not do this, there isn't a funding source for continued street improvements. I think that has to be the largest part of our education, because if you simply read the question that's being put out there to the voters, it's pretty hard to understand what that means. And we explained it with the question and answer, and that we got to keep putting it out there time after time after time, explaining what the question is, what it's about. The idea that your taxes will not go up with this, that's key to it. This is taking the place of paying off the bonds. That should be our chief focus with this. The other thing I mentioned, President Garvey mentioned at the last meeting, looking at the dates of the postings and that, do remember the early voting. So I don't know if that's 30 days prior to that, but some of these things might be a moot point if it's coming out the day before Election Day, because people have been voting for a month.
Yeah, I thought that early voting is important, because I don't know the exact numbers, but I know this in general, the Village of Brookfield site for early voting is one of the more popular ones in the suburbs, and if more Brookfield residents are gonna take advantage of that, it does change the timetable and schedule in terms of getting the message out. We've dealt with this over the years and, local elections and things, the whole timetable changed a little bit with early voting, and when you have an early voting site that's convenient and accessible, I know there's still people that like to vote on election day, and I'm one that tends to do that. I think I voted early voting last year due to a schedule conflict, but there's a lot of people that like to vote on election day, but there are also a lot of people that vote early, and they've already obviously voted and made up their mind before some of this has come out. So that's why I raised the issue, and I think that's an important part of the education campaign, is to get the information out there as early as possible and maybe expedite the schedule and in terms of the key pieces getting out there, and continue all the way through to election day in terms of getting the education materials out there. And again, just to echo Trustee Ketchmark's point, I mean, you were on the board, I think you were president in 2016, so he was something in 2016, Barb. He was sitting in this seat. No. He's been something for a long time. But and I was on the board also, and we did talk about that referendum was necessary to, and Barb, you've been around too. We portrayed it, and it was true at the time. At that point, we were doing a catch-up from years of not funding streets properly, so this large bond issue was needed to get the streets to a level that they should be at, and we did live up to that commitment and did what we said we were going to do with the bond money, and we did improve the streets, but staff was very clear, and Derek from Hancock Engineering and Dan have been very clear that these streets have a useful life, and we do maintain them, we do take good care of them, but they don't last forever. It's like owning a house. When you replace the roof, you hope you don't have to replace it again for how many years, but at some point if you're going to be around long enough. And Barb, I hope none of us get hit by a bus, and I hope a lot of us are around. I like to be around to see some streets get done too. So, but it's our obligation to plan for the future, even if some of us might not be around. We can't just say, well, we got us through this 20-year period, we got the streets fixed over 20 years, and now whoever's in next figure out how to do it. We do have to give them a source of revenue to do this. And Barb, I know you look at your tax bill, and I look at my tax bill, and you could say how much your village tax bill went up over the years, and I don't doubt your numbers and figures, but other taxing bodies, their rates have gone up also, and what you get out of your village taxes, I know you're a very careful person who looks at things and watches things, but that line item for your property tax bill for the village of Brookfield they're going to add more tax dollars to other things, but I am certain that we need these funds from the referendum to keep the streets at the level that we have them now and improve them over the next, the plan we have to improve them over the next 25 years is what we need to do to be responsible. I think the easiest thing in the world for some of us to do is say, look, we got us to this point, let's just step back and forget it, let the next group figure it out. That's not how this board has worked, and that's not how the staff has worked. We plan for the future, and this is part of our planning for the future. We're going to try and educate the residents and put out the best information we can, and we're going to explain if it passes, this was going to happen. We will also be very honest and say if it doesn't pass, that this is the problem and this is what's going to happen. Streets will not be able to be maintained at the level recommended going forward, and then there might have to be cuts in other areas or different things. We're never going to be able to come up with an additional $2 million that we need to do the streets. We'll do the best we can, but it's just the streets aren't going to be maintained the proper way without some other cuts or other significant changes. So I think that's what this is all about. Trustee Ketchmark keeps hitting on it, and I think the board agrees it's an education campaign. We're going to make our case. This is why it's needed. This is what it's needed for. And what we said back in 2016, we lived up to and we meant it. A lot of things have changed in the world since 2016. There's been a lot of things that have changed the financial impact and costs for everyone. And I know homeowners face large increased costs and large increased tax bills and more money at the pumps and more money at the grocery stores. But we as a village with your money face the same things. Our vehicles cost more, our gas for those vehicles costs more, we have to pay our employees to keep them. Those costs also go for the village. We treat the village like you treat your family budget. We have to do the same thing. We have to keep up. So as costs have increased for everyone, we've tried to do the best we can and be responsible, so we'll do the best we can with the education campaign and let the voters decide.
On the education campaign, I feel like, in particular, the article in the Brookfielder and the direct mail piece to residents will be critical in terms of informing folks. I know we have social media in here, and I know there's always online chatter about ideas like this, but I think we need to keep in mind that that's a really limited audience, the people who are engaging with this content on social media. So I trust we'll be putting proper attention and resources into the direct mail piece and the Brookfielder article, and I hope that we as a board, I don't know if it's in one of our September meetings, have an opportunity to provide input maybe on the direct mail piece. I understand we're not going to be advocating for voting one way or another, but as Trustee Ketchmark and others have said, the referendum question itself is not self-explanatory, right? So we need to make sure that residents understand what they're voting on, and I think in particular the direct mail piece and the Brookfielder article will be critical to achieving that goal.
And I hope people understand, we've said this several times, we didn't choose that language on the ballot by choice. We didn't get to write our own language. That's what's required by state statute, and we admit that it's confusing, but we didn't choose that language to confuse anyone. We could have put it a lot simpler, but when lawyers and legislators get involved, things get messy. I mean, if we chose the language we want, I think it would be a lot clearer what the vote's about. So I hope the residents understand that. Other questions or comments from the board? Okay. Well, thank you for the informational update. I think there's a clear consensus on the direction. As the, information about the, education campaign goes forward, information that can and should be shared with the board, please do so. I know we have consultants and I know we have very knowledgeable staff, but we also have board members up here who are familiar with the community and familiar with, and I think they could give some good input. So if there's any opportunity for input from the board, please reach out to the board and give them the opportunity to do that. So, and I know there's been a lot of time spent on this already, and I know there's going to be a lot of time spent on it going forward, so thank you. All right, anything else from anybody on this topic? Okay. That's the only item we had up for discussion tonight. I'm going to once again open it up to public comment. I'm going to switch first time. Anybody on this side? Anybody on this side? Okay, hearing no public comment. Tim, is there a need for executive session? Okay. At 7:16 PM, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole meeting.
So moved.
Secretary, who
Second.
was it here?
Yes.
Trustee Kaluzny, and then who was, Trustee Naramatsu, or Trustee Ketchmark? Motion by Trustee Kaluzny, second by Trustee Ketchmark. Roll call, please.
Trustee Ketchmark.
Aye.
Trustee Whitehead.
Aye.
Trustee Hendricks.
Aye.
Trustee Naramatsu.
Aye.
Trustee Gilhooly.
Aye.
Trustee Kaluzny.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, we're adjourned at 7:16 PM. Thank you for coming.